Hey, welcome to Art with Ian. Today we're talking about painting clouds. That's coming up next. Alright, so painting clouds. Basically I start by laying in my sky really quick. I choose a deep sky color, then I pick a direction of light using the gradient tool. Then I basically just lay down my deepest shadow color and build the forms and shapes. Then I come in with a pass with my midtones, or getting closer to my midtones, and this is where I start to further develop the shapes, the forms, and everything I'm doing now is all based on that direction of light that I chose. So you want to establish your direction of light early on. I'm using my chalky render brush as per usual. There'll be a link for that up in the corner. I will eventually get into the use of an airbrush to soften things up, but right now I just want to make sure I'm getting a decent solid opaque paint layer down. And I'm doing this all in one layer so far right now as well. So just painting a little extra wispy stuff to kind of help break the sky up. It looks like now I have gone to an airbrush to lay in my brightest lights. So this is where you kind of establish some rim light and really start to push the bright light and soften things up a bit. I'm back to my chalky brush now. Just developing. I am looking at a reference. I'm being loose with the reference as usual. I don't like to do overly perfect copies of references, but it just kind of helps you establish the main mood that you want to go for. So at this point I'm starting to clean up now. It's getting into the refining, picking areas where I want to push the light harder than other areas where I feel like nothing would impede that spot from the sunlight, so then you want to get it really hot there. Now I'm doing a little bit of overlay. I did a new layer and put it to overlay and just did a little bit of brightening with that. And then I'm using that to now go in and even get hotter, more bright with my lights. I'm refining some shapes and forms here. Yeah, I wanted to break that line up there between the clouds. I thought it was too consistent. It wasn't interesting enough. So instead I end up with breaking that main cloud up into two shapes. Now I'm going in and refining a bit more, getting into the smaller tertiary stuff even more now. Just little bits of things. This is all about taking your time and building up slowly. Don't expect this to happen quickly. I have this painting sped up. I spent about 45 minutes on these clouds, just building the layers and stuff. So that's pretty much the sped up version. Now let's go ahead and jump in and do just a little bit of real-time demo stuff. Alright. Okay, so let's get into this real quick demo. Now I'm not going to do a fully fleshed out real-time painting here because that would just take too long for the video, but I'll give a good idea of kind of the method. So first thing we want to do is get our paint bucket, and we want to get a good sky color. So let's go ahead and find, so we know that I'm gonna do something a little bit more like sunset, since I already did a daytime demo. So we know that the sun is going down, and that means the sky is getting darker. So I'm gonna go kind of somewhere in here, basically about 50% value, and not too saturated, about 30% saturation. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill the sky in with that. So you get this kind of grayed out, not too bright, not too dark kind of a sky happening. And then I'm going to think of basically the shadow color now that I want to use for my cloud, because we want to start with our deeper color and build lighter on top of that. So for the shadow color, I want it to be pretty close to the sky color. I'm thinking probably a little, maybe slightly more purple. And maybe just a tiny bit darker. Now you might be noticing that I haven't established my direction of light. Now I don't know that I will put that in, maybe a tiny bit, but the sun, I'm gonna say the sun is over here, off to the left of my canvas, and it's going down, so the light will be coming up this direction from left to right. But I don't know if the sun has enough power where I want to be. I want to be far enough away, kind of, so that the sky doesn't have. I want to keep the sky like a cool color, and then the clouds warm, and that'll create a really cool contrast of color. So, anyways, that said, let's get my chalky brush, and I'm gonna create a layer on top of my sky here. Let's just see how this purpley blue feels for a shadow color. It might be a little too purple. Let's try this. Yeah, this might be okay. Now we don't want to go too dark here, because there's not, what the dimmer the light gets, the less harsh shadows it can cast. Hence why we see such cool colors later on in the evening. We see cool colors and shadows because the light's not bright enough to kick all the ambient skylight out of the shadow, and that's why shadows cool down so much at that time of day. That's why it's such a pretty time of day to look at. So I'm just going to build up a general shape here. Maybe we'll do like one plume kind of coming up here, and then another one kind of up here a bit, and something like that. Remember, this is the phase where you want to kind of develop your most broad shape and form. So things can get more interesting from here if you develop them further, but you do want to give yourself a decent starting point here to work off of. So I'm just going to go with something like this. Okay, so now we've got our shadow kind of laid in and our basic shape. So now we need to start building some form on top of this. So let's go a little bit warmer now. And let's see here. That's probably okay. Let's just give it a shot. I'm not using layers. I'm just gonna paint stuff out if I don't like it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start establishing some new shapes that are on here. And basically this is where the form starts to show up. You're showing that this thing has form. It's not just a flat sticker slapped on a 2D plane. And that's really what, as artists, that's really 2D artists anyways, that's really what our job is all about. If we want the viewer to believe that we're showing them something that really exists or could really exist, our job is to make sure that we think about it in three-dimensional space, and then do what we can to show that thing in three-dimensional space, to create three-dimensional space, basically. The illusion of it. So I'm still, this isn't the kind of point now here where you want to get like detailed, but you do want, it's the first phase of developing shapes that are less broad than your original shadow. So you know, don't go crazy with the detail ideas, but don't be too broad, or you won't start establishing anything to work with later. So I want this, you know, this is a puffy kind of cloud. So I want I'm establishing a lot of these kind of bulges, right? These bubbly things. I like these kinds of clouds. And remember, I said my light is over here to the left and coming up at it, so that means up here it's probably not going to catch any light really too much. Maybe there's a bit of a plume that comes up like that there. Okay, now I'm going to take one of my feathered areas of this color. I'm going to take that and color pick it, and I'm just going to sort of paint. I'm going to basically ease this color into my shadow color in some areas so that we feel a very soft turning form. We want it to feel like this thing is just expansive and pluming, and one of the best ways to get that feeling is for the light to fall off of the form very slowly, very gradually into shadow. If you go straight from light to shadow very quickly, you're going to create sharp feeling edges, things that turn very quickly away from the light, because as soon as you stop seeing the light and you start seeing the shadow, that form has turned. And your brain will tell you that when it looks at it, whether it knows whether or not it analyzes why it's feeling that way, that's what it's going to think. That's what your brain will tell you when it sees that. So we're just basically just easing with halftones. We're easing from light to shadow now. And I think that's about good. As I said, I'm not gonna go crazy with the level of detail on this demo. So now we've got a good subtle feeling of light starting to happen, something nice to look at. So now we want to start bringing in the areas that would be glowing even more. So that means we need to warm up even more. Let's say that the light is getting past this plume here into here, like I'm showing, because this area is actually closer to us than this plume of cloud is back here. So that means this isn't stopping light from getting over here. So let's hit this with brighter light. And then let's hit this. And remember, you're creating shapes here, you're creating forms, so you think about what's interesting to look at. Try not to just do like the exact same shape over and over and over like this, okay? Because it can be easy. Humans are so pattern oriented. We love patterns so much that it's really easy when we're painting to fall into patterns. But the problem with that is that the world, as much as there are patterns in the world, in nature, it's super sporadic as well. And so if you fall into these ruts, like patterns and things, then your painting will look very contrived, because you're not being random enough with your shape. You need to vary up the size, the angle, those kinds of things. It all matters a lot to how your viewer will digest your image. They're gonna, if if they see these hardcore repeating patterns, they're going to either think, if they're savvy enough to understand how digital art works, they're going to either think you copy pasted something over and over again because you were lazy, or they're going to think that you're not. Either way, the result is what they think won't be good. Basically, so make sure that you take your time and try not to repeat shapes and forms over and over again. It's an easy habit to fall into when you're painting. I certainly struggle with it. I have to constantly remind myself not to do that. And even when I'm reminding myself not to do it, I still do it. So, and have to go in and break stuff up later. Okay. Let's grab one of these halftones like we did before with the color picker, and just go ahead and start to soften some of these ones now. As you can tell, this is basically just a process that it's quite, once you know the process, it's just about just being patient and doing it. This isn't very technical type of painting. This is the kind of painting where you put on your favorite jam and you just listen to the music and paint, and you're not going, okay, what's the proportion of this and how do I get my perspective right? I mean, there's a little bit of perspective in cloud painting depending on what you're doing, but it's a lot more free than a lot of things, and it can be really relaxing and allow you to explore color, shape, all kinds of things, So, all right. Let's get into a little bit of overlay now. Let's really push some light onto this. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to set the color or the layer mode to overlay, and I'm going to go ahead and pick a color that's really warm now. I'm going to go into like somewhere in here, pinkish orange. Now the overlay layer mode adds saturation and brightness, so I'm going to kind of back off my saturation a little bit from where I would want it, and back off my brightness a little bit. And let's get an airbrush. There are two different types of airbrushes you could use. The soft round is a lot more just controlled, and then the soft round pressure opacity flow one gives you a lot of control, like a lot of variation, right? So I'm going to use this one because I want it to be super subtle. So I'm just going to hit this. And I'm going to change my color now. I'm going to go more yellow. We're still orange, but we're moving towards yellow. I'm going to hit right in there, right here, and maybe do just a little sweep there. Okay, and then we'll create one more layer and get in there with maybe just a soft round brush now, and bring the size down. This might be too bright, but I can ease it back after with a soft eraser. Just gonna get a few spots that are like really getting hit hard by light. right, and now obviously that's way too harsh looking, so we gotta grab our soft eraser. And ease all that back. Anyways, you can see basically this is the method. So I obviously would take time to sit here and really develop this and keep going and going and going and pushing and pushing and pushing. But basically this is the method that I use for creating clouds. And it doesn't matter if you're doing sunset, it doesn't matter if you're doing daytime. It's just a matter of thinking about them as having volume and density, even though they're still light and fluffy, and starting with your deeps, your shadows, and building your mids and lights on top, and just keep building and developing. Take your time with it so that it doesn't feel like this really rushed cotton ball, basically. All right, so that's going to do it for painting clouds. I hope you learned something. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.